Welcome back to another crazy story time. I was born with pain transference. Whatever pain someone fakes in my presence, they feel for real. When a girl pretended I pushed her and cried about how much it hurt, the next second, she was screaming as if every bone in her body had shattered. When a con artist threw herself in front of my car, wailing that her back was broken, her vertebrae instantly dislocated, paralyzing her on the asphalt. Over time, people learned to treat me with a healthy dose of fear. No one dared to fake an illness or play the victim in my vicinity. Until, for the sake of a family merger, I was engaged to a brilliant, aloof maestro of surgery. At our engagement party, his little sister from med school clutched her stomach, face slick with cold sweat, as she cried in front of the city's medical elite. She clung to my fiancé's sleeve and whispered, "Julian, my stomach cancer, it's flaring up. It hurts so much. Please save me." The elegant ballroom fell silent. My fiancé removed his gloves. Serafina Monica is in critical condition. The engagement party will have to wait. A doctor's duty comes first. I can't just stand by while a patient suffers. The champagne flute in my hand paused midair. Turns out you're telling the truth. In that case, you can just drop dead. Your cancer cells have just metastasized. The pain has been magnified tenfold. You're going to die in agony. Julian stopped in his tracks and glared at me. Serafina, what the hell are you talking about? Monica is already so sick and you're cursing her? How can you be so vicious? The moment he finished speaking, a blood-curdling shriek ripped from Monica's throat. The sound was so piercing it seemed to shatter the crystal chandeliers. Monica thrashed out of Julian's arms, crashing to the floor. She curled into a ball, clutching her stomach like a boiled shrimp. Her white dress instantly soaked with sweat. She writhed on the ground, her head banging against the marble. It hurts. It hurts so much. Somebody help me. My stomach is exploding. My insides are on fire, she screamed, clawing at her own belly, her nails digging bloody furrows into her skin. Julian was horrified. He dropped to his knees trying to restrain her. Monica, what's wrong? Lost to the pain, Monica bit down hard on his wrist. Julian grunted in pain but refused to let her go. He looked up at me, his eyes blazing with fury. Serafina, what did you do to her? I stood my ground looking down on them. What could I do? Didn't she say she has terminal stomach cancer? This is what a flare-up looks like. Surely a great doctor like you would know that. The guests began to whisper. That girl screams. They don't sound fake. Could she really have terminal cancer? How tragic. Julian no longer had time to argue with me. Monica's eyes were rolling back. In her head, foam flecked her lips and her breathing grew ragged. Monica, hang on. I'm taking you to the hospital right now. Ignoring the bite on his wrist, I scooped her up and ran for the door. At the threshold, he turned back, his gaze pinning me. Serafina, if anything happens to Monica, I will make you pay. I just smiled coldly and drained my champagne. Let's be clear, Julian. You're the one who publicly abandoned me for another woman. As of now, our engagement is void. You're not breaking it off? I am. Julian froze for a second, then snarled, fine. I wouldn't want a cold-blooded woman like you anyway. And with that, he was gone. Dead silence filled the ballroom. Everyone stared at me. I set down my glass, walked onto the stage, and took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies, but the engagement party is canceled. Please eat, drink, and enjoy the rest of the evening. It's all on my tab. Then I gathered the skirt of my gown and walked out, leaving a sea of stunned faces behind me. I knew with absolute certainty Monica was a dead woman. My power of pain transference had never once failed. If she dared to fake terminal cancer, I would make her experience it for real. Magnified by 10, Julian rushed Monica to his own hospital, City Central, straight into the emergency room. Her screams echoed through the entire earth. He pulled some strings and ordered an emergency full-body CT scan. He stood in the control room, his eyes glued to the monitor. When the images appeared, the attending physician gasped. Dr. Barkley, this is impossible. Julian shoved the doctor aside. On the screen was a massive, irregularly bordered tumor in her stomach. But that wasn't all. Her liver, lungs, even her bones were riddled with metastatic lesions. It was real. Stage 4 stomach cancer spread throughout her entire body. Incurable. Julian's legs gave out and he nearly collapsed. How can this be? She had a full physical just last month at this very hospital. All her markers were normal. The physician sighed. The images don't lie. With this level of metastasis, she has 3 months to live at most from the earth. Monica's screams continued unabated. They gave her painkiller after painkiller. But even the highest dose of morphine couldn't touch the pain. She had ripped the bed sheets to shreds. Julian burst into her room, grabbing her hand. "Monica, don't be afraid. I'm the best surgeon there is. I will save you." Ignoring the other doctor's advice, he scheduled an emergency surgery. He was going to open her up and cut the tumor out himself. The operating light flickered on. Julian scrubbed in, scalpel in hand. The moment he made the first incision, he despaired. Her abdominal cavity was filled with cancerous fluid and nodules. Her stomach was a necrotic, pulpy mess. There was nothing to cut. Nowhere to start his celebrated surgical skill was a joke. Julian's hands began to tremble and the scalpel clattered to the floor. He leaned against the operating table, buried his face in his hands, and broke down sobbing. Meanwhile, I had returned to the Vance family estate. The moment I walked in, a teacup flew past my head, shattering at my feet. My father was on the sofa, his face crimson with rage. "You insolent girl. Do you have any idea what you've done? Calling off the engagement in front of all those people? What about the Barkley family's dignity? What about our family's dignity?" I looked at him coldly. "Julian abandoned me for another woman. Did you want me to get on my knees and beg him to stay?" My father slammed his hand on the table and shot to his feet. He was a patient. "Julian is a doctor. Saving lives is his duty. Not only did you show no understanding, you said those vicious things. You will go to the hospital right now. Apologize to Julian and apologize to that girl." I stood my ground. "No." He pointed a trembling finger at me. "If you don't go, you are no longer my daughter." When I still didn't move, he clutched his chest. His body swung. You're trying to kill me." "Oh, my heart. I think I'm having a heart attack." He collapsed onto the sofa, gasping for air. My mother rushed to his side, then turned to me. "Serafina, are you trying to give your father a heart attack?" I looked at my father's clumsy performance and sneered. He got a full physical twice a year. His heart was as strong as an ox. And now he was pulling the stunt to make me back down. I walked over to the sofa. "A heart attack? Is it? It's very painful. Are you sure you want one?" My father faltered for a second, then cried out even louder. "You ungrateful child. You really are giving me a heart attack." I nodded, "All right. As you wish." Instantly, the color drained from my father's face. His eyes flew open, his hands clawing at his chest. His lips, once ruddy, turned a sickening shade of blue. He gasped, but no sound came out, only a rattling in his throat. He tumbled off the sofa, his body convulsing on the floor. My mother was stunned. Honey, what's wrong? Don't scare me." My father's eyes had rolled back. He was unconscious. I calmly took out my phone and dialed 911. "Yes, Vance Estate, we have a case of acute myocardial infarction. Bring a defibrillator. Hurry." 15 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics performed CPR on the spot. No heartbeat. Charging clear. My father's body arched off the floor. It took 3 shocks to get a faint, thready pulse. The paramedics, sweating, loaded him onto a gurney. "Family needs to come now. We could lose him any second." My mother followed, crying as she left. She shot me a look of pure terror. She had suddenly remembered my terrifying gift, my crow's beak that had followed me since childhood. The house fell silent, the maids hidden corners, not daring to breathe. I sat on the sofa and poured myself a cup of tea, faking an illness in my presence. No one gets away with it. The porcelain cup was warm against my icy palms. I sat alone in the sprawling living room of the Vance estate. The silence was heavy, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock. The maids had vanished into the woodwork like frightened mice. They knew better than to draw my attention. My phone buzzed on the glass coffee table. It was a text from my mother. "Your father is in a coma. The doctors say his heart muscle suffered catastrophic damage. He might never wake up." I stared at the glowing screen for a long moment. I felt no pity, no remorse, only a profound sense of inevitability. He had played a foolish game of emotional blackmail. The prize he won was a bed in the intensive care unit. I typed a brief reply. "Make sure he gets the best care money can buy." I tossed the phone aside and walked over to the grand window. The city lights flickered in the distance, a sea of unaware souls. Somewhere out there, Julian Barkley was experiencing the destruction of his flawless world. The great maestro of surgery had finally met an illness he could not cut away. The next morning, the high society gossip mills were running at full capacity. News of the cancelled engagement party had spread like a wildfire. Rumors intertwined with half-truths about Monica's sudden collapse. Some said it was acute poisoning. Others whispered that it was divine retribution for seducing her brother's mentor. No one knew the absolute truth except me, and perhaps Julian. I dressed in a sharp, charcoal gray tailored suit. If my father was incapacitated, there was a power vacuum at Vance Enterprises. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so do corporate boardrooms. I arrived at the company headquarters before the executive directors had even finished their morning coffee. I bypassed my usual office and walked straight into my father's executive suite. His mahogany desk was cluttered with unapproved contracts and merger documents. The very merger documents that had chained me to Julian in the first place. I gathered the Barclay merger files into a neat stack. Then I dropped them straight into the paper shredder. The mechanical grinding sound was immensely satisfying. The door clicked open, and my father's chief operating officer stepped in. Mr. Sterling was a gray-haired veteran of the corporate wars. "Serafina, what are you doing in here?" I turned to face him, my expression blank. My father is in a medically induced coma. As the sole heir and the largest secondary shareholder, I am assuming the role of acting CEO. Sterling's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't just declare yourself the head of the company. The board needs to vote on this." I walked around the desk and looked him dead in the eye. "Then convene the board, Mr. Sterling. But let me give you a word of advice before you do. Do not pretend to have the company's best interests at heart if you're secretly planning a hostile takeover." My words were soft, but they carried the weight of a loaded gun. Sterling swallowed hard, his face paling slightly. He remembered the rumors about me from my childhood. The whispered warnings that Serafina Vance was cursed. "I am calling an emergency meeting for noon. I expect full compliance." Sterling nodded hastily and backed out of the room. I took my father's leather chair and spun it toward the window. The empire was mine now. Meanwhile, the situation at City Central Hospital had descended into pure madness. I received updates through a private investigator I had hired to keep an eye on Julian. Monica's condition was deteriorating at a speed that defied medical science. The cancer was not just growing, it was aggressively consuming her from the inside out. Her screams had become a permanent soundtrack in the oncology ward. The hospital administration had been forced to move her to a soundproofed psychiatric room in the basement. It was the only way to stop the other patients from complaining. Julian had not left her side for 3 days. He was a shadow of the arrogant genius I had almost married. His designer scrubs were stained and wrinkled. His hands, once insured for millions, were shaking uncontrollably from sleep deprivation. He had called in favors from oncologists all over the globe. He flew in experimental drugs from Switzerland and gene therapies from Japan. None of it worked. My curse was absolute. When a liar is punished by the universe, science cannot intervene. On the 4th day, Julian finally cracked. He left the hospital and drove straight to Vance Enterprises. Security tried to stop him in the lobby, but he shoved past them like a madman. He burst into my office just as I was signing off on a new acquisition. "Serafina." His voice was hoarse, ragged from shouting at incompetent nurses. I slowly capped my fountain pen and looked up. "You are trespassing, Julian." He slammed his hands on my desk, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "Stop this right now. I know you did this to her. I know you have some kind of sick, twisted trick." I leaned back in my chair, unbothered by his outburst. "A trick? You are a man of science, Julian. Are you telling me I possess magical powers to induce metastatic tumors?" He gritted his teeth, his breath smelling of stale coffee and desperation. "I don't know how you did it, but she was fine a month ago. She just had a stomachache. She just wanted a little attention from me. She didn't actually have cancer." I raised an eyebrow in mock surprise. "So, you admit she was faking it? You admit she lied to you, to me, and to everyone at the party?" Julian flinched, but his anger quickly masked his shame. "She made a mistake. She is young and foolish. But she doesn't deserve to die in agony. Take it back, Serafina. Whatever you did, undo it." I stood up, resting my palms gracefully on the cool glass of the desk. "I didn't do anything to her, Julian. I merely allowed her lies to become her reality. If she had been honest, she would be perfectly healthy. Her pain is her own creation." Julian's face twisted in an ugly mix of rage and sorrow. He reached across the desk, grabbing the collar of my silk blouse. "I will kill you if she dies. I will tell the whole world what a monster you are." I didn't blink. I didn't even try to pull away. "Go ahead, Julian. Tell them. Tell the medical board that your mistress faked terminal cancer to steal another woman's fiancé. Tell them that you abandoned your duty and your dignity for a liar. See what happens to your precious reputation. He let go of me as if my clothes had caught fire. He stumbled backward, realizing the impossible corner he had painted himself into. You are a demon. I smoothed the fabric of my collar. No, I am just a mirror. I reflect the ugly truth that people try to hide. Now get out of my office before I have you arrested for assault. Julian turned and fled, a broken man running out of time. By the end of the week, my mother finally returned home from the hospital. She looked 10 years older. She walked into the dining room where I was having a quiet dinner. She didn't sit down. She stood at the edge of the long table, staring at me like I was a stranger. He's not waking up, Serafina. Her voice was hollow, devoid of its usual arrogant lilt. The doctors say he will need round-the-clock care for the rest of his life. I cut a piece of my steak, chewing slowly. I have already arranged for a private nursing staff. The estate has plenty of room. He will be comfortable. My mother gripped the back of a mahogany chair. How can you be so cold? He is your father. I set my fork down and wiped my mouth with a linen napkin. He tried to fake a heart attack to force me to apologize to the man who humiliated me. He gambled with my curse, knowing full well what it does. He brought this upon himself. She shook her head, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. You could have warned him. You could have stopped him. I stared at her, my patience wearing thin. I did warn him. I warned him my entire life. When I was 6, a nanny faked a migraine to avoid playing with me. Her skull nearly split open from an aneurysm 10 minutes later. When I was 12, a classmate faked a broken ankle to get out of gym class. His bone snapped in half while he was sitting completely still. You both knew what I was. You told me to hide it, to suppress it, to pretend I was normal. But you forgot to fear it. My mother had no response. She simply turned around and walked up the grand staircase, a ghost haunting her own home. I was truly alone now, and I had never felt more powerful. Meanwhile, the tragedy of Julian Barkley was reaching its final act. Monica's body was shutting down. Her kidneys had failed. Her liver was a toxic sponge. The tumors had spread to her vocal cords, rendering her screams into grotesque, gurgling rasps. Julian had lost his medical license. The board suspended him after he was caught stealing highly restricted, experimental narcotics from the hospital pharmacy. He was trying to overdose Monica to give her the mercy of a painless death. He couldn't even manage that. My power ensured that the pain would run its full, magnified course. The narcotics simply passed through her system without dulling a single nerve ending. Desperation drove Julian to insanity. He became convinced that the only way to save Monica was to trick me. He believed the curse was transactional. He formulated a plan so profoundly stupid, only a genius could have thought of it. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was walking out of the Vance Enterprises building, flanked by 2 security guards. The street was slick with dark rain, reflecting the neon city lights. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the shadows of an alley. It was Julian. He was drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead. He held something shiny in his right hand. A surgical scalpel. My guards immediately drew their weapons, but I raised a hand to stop them. Hold your fire. Julian didn't look at the guards. His hollow eyes were locked entirely on me. Serafina, I figured it out. His voice was manic, a shrill laugh bubbling beneath his words. An eye for an eye. Pain for pain. If you feel it, then Monica doesn't have to. I sighed, genuinely exhausted by his stupidity. Julian, put the knife down. You are embarrassing yourself. No, he shouted, raising the scalpel higher. I know how to break the link. If I make you suffer, the curse will reverse. I have to cut you. I have to make you bleed. He lunged forward, but he didn't aim for me. In his warped, exhausted mind, he realized he couldn't reach me before the guards shot him. So he opted for a different kind of manipulation. He stopped halfway, pressing the scalpel against his own throat. If you don't take the curse back right now, I will kill myself. He glared at me, his chest heaving. I am bleeding, Serafina. Look at me. I am dying. I am cutting my own throat. He didn't actually press the blade hard enough to break the skin. He was bluffing. He was trying to stage a life-or-death crisis to break my psychological armor. He was faking a fatal wound in my presence. A cold chill washed over the rainy street. I took a step back, my eyes widening not in fear, but in absolute shock. Julian, don't say that. But it was too late. The words had left his mouth. The lie had been spoken in my vicinity. I am cutting my own throat. I am dying. The air seemed to crackle with an unseen, terrifying energy. Julian's eyes suddenly bulged out of his skull. He dropped the scalpel, his hands flying to his neck. A perfect, invisible razor was slicing through his flesh. Blood erupted from his throat in a spectacular, horrifying arc. It sprayed across the wet pavement, mixing with the rain. He tried to scream, but only a wet, gurgling sound escaped his severed windpipe. He collapsed to his knees, clutching the gaping, invisible wound. The security guards screamed in terror, dropping their guns. They couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. A man's throat opening up on its own, a flawless surgical incision made by ghosts. Julian fell face forward into a puddle of his own blood. His body twitched once, twice, and then went completely still. The maestro of surgery had died by an invisible blade. I stood there under my black umbrella, watching the rain wash the blood into the storm drain. I felt a strange sense of closure. The man who had broken my heart and humiliated me in front of the city was gone. And he had done it to himself. I turned to my terrified guards. Call the police. Tell them Dr. Barkley had a psychotic break and committed suicide. There was no weapon found on his neck, only the scalpel resting inches from his lifeless hand. The autopsy would show a perfectly precise laceration, exactly matching the blade he had dropped. The authorities would rule it a tragic, inexplicable suicide. Later that night, the hospital called my private investigator. Monica had passed away. The moment Julian died, her heart finally gave out. Perhaps the shock of the severed connection killed her. Or perhaps her body had simply run out of pain to endure. Either way, the tragic lovers had met their perfectly orchestrated demise. The following months were a period of rapid consolidation. Without Julian or my father to oppose me, I ruled Vance Enterprises with an iron fist. The board of directors quickly learned to never lie in my presence. If a manager exaggerated their quarterly earnings, they would suddenly suffer a violent bout of food poisoning. If a competitor spread false rumors about our supply chain, their own factories would inexplicably catch fire. The business world began to view me with a mixture of absolute terror and divine reverence. I was dubbed the truth teller of Wall Street. No one knew exactly how I always knew when someone was lying. They just knew that deceiving Serafina Vance carried a lethal penalty. My mother eventually moved out of the estate. She bought a quiet villa in the south of France, taking my comatose father with her. She couldn't bear to look at me anymore. She said my eyes reminded her of an empty abyss. I didn't argue with her. I funded their lifestyle generously and never visited. Some curses require isolation to truly flourish. 5 years later, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, looking out over the empire I had built. The city was a sprawling network of lights, pulsing with life and lies. People lied every single day. They lied to their spouses, to their bosses, to themselves. But they did not lie to me. I raised a glass of expensive champagne to the dark sky. I had turned a freakish childhood affliction into the ultimate weapon. I was the undisputed queen of a world built on absolute, terrifying honesty. I took a sip of the champagne, the bubbles dancing on my tongue. It tasted like victory. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that no one would ever dare to betray me again. Serafina's brutal honesty proves that karma is absolute. What would you do with her powers? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories.